What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Rangers. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co host, Eric Wilson. And the Rangers, the slump continues. They really should have won that game versus the Sharks. Goes into overtime, overtime loss. The defense just collapsed. I don't know what to say at this point with this New York Rangers team. I mean, after the phenomenal start to the season, they hit a slump. All right, we think we're so back. Oh my God, it's so over. They just keep going into slumps, coming out of them for 2 games, going right back into the slump. So overall, it's just been a long slump for a couple months now. And I don't know what the Rangers can do to fix it, but one thing that I do know is that the defense has been letting this team down. And I think really you can have a discussion on who should stay, who should go. Should some of these guys be up on the trade block at the deadline? Should the Rangers be pivoting their attention away from targeting a right wing or center to targeting a solid defenseman? I think you can make an argument that that's a pretty big need for them heading into this trade deadline. So we're going to go ahead in this episode and discuss just how bad the defense has been and how it's really let this team down in many different games this season, and kind of just discuss who we think should stay, who should go, should they blow it all up on the defensive side, all that stuff in between. But before we dive into all that, make sure to leave a like if you do enjoy this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. Comment your thoughts on the topics down below in the comment section. If you listen on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review and go ahead and follow us on all our social media channels at Fireside Rangers. Without further ado, Eric, how are you doing today, my friend? And what is your reaction to the way that the defense has played in recent games?
I'm doing good today, Anthony. I'm definitely a lot better than yesterday. Yesterday was a terrible day, waking up super tired after that Rangers loss. But me and Will made that episode yesterday. It was just 20 minutes of us like ranting about how terrible we are. Kind of got that weight off my shoulders. I'm like, all right, we've announced that we have a lot of issues here in the Rangers roster, but now that we've just like acknowledged them, we can start to talk about how to work on them and fix them, because the Rangers clearly aren't doing anything to fix it. So we'll do it for them. We'll send this video over to Peter Laviolette, and he can just follow our step-by-step instruction on how to fix the defense, because the defense, of all the things that are going wrong with the Rangers, this is probably the most prominent one. The trade deadline's coming up like a month or so away. Yeah, that sounds, yeah, because March 8th, I think it is. And some of these defensemen, they might need to go. Some of them should definitely stay. We know that the right wing is probably the first target they're going to make to fix that offensive core, but the defense needs to have some work done too. I kind of just want to start off when we say of who should stay and who should go. There's one clear candidate of who needs to stay 100%. He's not going anywhere. That man is Adam Fox. He's the best defender on the New York Rangers. And sure, ever since he got back from injury earlier on in the season, he hasn't been himself. He's definitely taken a little bit of a step back, but Adam Fox is just so good that even when he does take a step back, he's still close to perfect, easily the best defender on the Rangers. So I think of everyone that I'm confident in, it is Adam Fox himself.
Yeah, I mean, quite easily, it's Adam Fox is the number one guy that we could still feel confident in, although he hasn't been his normal self, in my opinion. I think at the beginning of the season, sure, he was still Adam Fox. Then the injury happened. Then he's returned, and he really hasn't been the same. And so I know that we've had this discussion before, Eric, but I guess to update how you feel on it, do you think that Adam Fox is still just rusty because of the injury and working his way back, or do you think that there's something larger at play here?
It's definitely just something larger at play. It's maybe not even anything larger. It's quite simple. Like this entire defensive core has fallen apart. I fully believe that Adam Fox is healthy, and it's not his fault. But when everyone that he's playing with is also playing horribly, it's going to kind of bring him down a little bit. He's still playing great defense, in my opinion. I think where he's really fallen off is the offense, which, regularly at 5v5, the entire team is struggling. He's on that first power play unit where Chris Kreider and Mika Zibanejad are doing absolutely nothing. So you can't really put too much blame on Fox there. I think as soon as the rest of the team whips back up into shape, you're going to see a lot more production coming from Fox. Like I said, right now he's been playing solid defensively. Of all the goals that have been scored because of these defensive lapses, I don't think too many of them are really to blame for Adam Fox. I still think he's an A+ player. Maybe not A++ like we've seen him perform at in the past, but I really got no complaints. And, Ryan Lindgren, his defensive partner there when the team's playing at even strength, Lindgren's another one of those players where I don't really have anything bad to say, but recently I don't really have anything good to say about him either. He's kind of just there doing his job. He's not going above and beyond, but he's not hurting the team either. I think the most interesting part about Ryan Lindgren is the fact that he's going to be a restricted free agent after this season. So, I'm sure the Rangers are definitely going to want to keep him around. Chris Drury is going to do pretty much everything in his power to keep Lindgren around because Fox and Lindgren, that's their number one lockdown duo right there. The problem is really just going to be money. Lindgren is probably going to ask for a little bit of a pay raise here. The Rangers can't really afford to give him too much more. So when it comes to who should stay and who should go, that's really just up to Chris Drury at this point when it comes to Ryan Lindgren. How much money is he willing to set aside for signing him? He's not the only defender who is going to be a restricted free agent. Braden Schneider as well, who we'll get into later when I start to get angry and complain. And Matt Robertson, prospect down in Hartford. He's also a restricted free agent. So we'll see what happens there. Obviously, Schneider and Robertson won't be getting as much money as Ryan Lindgren, but I like Ryan Lindgren. He's good. We've seen in the past how much he means to the Rangers lineup when he's out with injury, which happens quite frequently, I will say. They kind of fall off a cliff defensively, but they've already fallen off a cliff defensively with him in the lineup. So who knows anymore? This whole situation it's a little mind-boggling. But Ryan Lindgren, I guess you get my vote to stay. I'll let Chris Drury and his financial expertise handle the rest.
Yeah, I think at the pairing of Adam Fox and Ryan Lindgren is here to stay, and it should be here to stay. But one thing about Ryan Lindgren, one thing that I've noticed here, just taking a look at the past 10 games and the past 5-game averages, Eric, is you're seeing a time on ice per game with Adam Fox at 24 minutes. And so I want to ask you if you think he needs to have his ice time cut back, because comparatively speaking, Ryan Lindgren is at 20.8 minutes. Then you have KeAndre Miller at 20.91. You have Jacob Trouba at 21.87. So Fox and Trouba leading the way with the most time on ice of the defensemen. Gustafsson and Schneider are both under 13 minutes, so they're not on the ice a whole lot there. But Adam Fox leading the way with like a whole extra 3 minutes compared to everybody else. I'm wondering if you think part of the problem could be that they have him on the ice too much, or if maybe you think it's that they don't have Ryan Lindgren on the ice with him long enough, because there's a 4-minute difference in average time on ice between the two in each game. So just looking at those numbers, what is your takeaway from the stats and how much ice time everybody's getting? Do you think that that Peter Laviolette needs to reallocate some of the ice time to maybe give a couple more minutes to Ryan Lindgren, scale back KeAndre Miller, maybe Jacob Trouba? How are you feeling about the time on ice splits and the way that everybody's been, just how much everybody's been on the ice?
So the NHL doesn't break down where these minutes are coming from, but I would have to assume that these extra minutes that Fox is getting compared to his defensive partner Lindgren are coming from power play time, which to me, and I know the problem would be overworking Fox and maybe his skills are being hurt, his abilities are being diminished because he's too tired on the ice the whole time. But when I think of power play time, Fox is kind of just the power, the quarterback sitting up at the blue line, passing it around, he's not skating around in circles, draining his energy too much there. But, I do like the fact that Fox and Lindgren are getting relatively good amounts of ice time. They're the best defenders. And I think if you were to scale back Fox's time on ice, we're just going to see a lot more defensive problems when you have the lesser defensemen recently playing more. I know you said Jacob Trouba second most, which I don't think it should be like that. I get Trouba's the captain and he started off the season really well, but when you talk about defensemen that have been causing problems, I think Jacob Trouba and KeAndre Miller are certainly up there. But overall, I like the ice time Fox is getting. The Rangers need it. He needs it. He's the number one, like we said. The less time Fox is on the ice, the higher the chances that other teams are going to score on us, in my opinion. So I think it's kind of just what you got to do. You got to work your best guy that hard, and that's how you keep pucks out of the net.
Yeah, so let's move on to the second defensive pairing. We talked about Adam Fox and Ryan Lindgren. We both like them, think they're still great players and should stay here long term. But let's talk about KeAndre Miller and Jacob Trouba. And I know you have a lot to say about KeAndre Miller, who is sitting right in front of me. So I want to discuss Jacob Trouba first and get that out of the way. And I want to say that I think it's time for another Jacob Trouba helmet throw. I think it's time for him to step up and bring this team back together, because the slump that they've been in and the inconsistency that they've shown is reminiscent of last season when everything started to spiral out of control. Yeah, they picked it back up after the trade deadline, added in a bunch of pieces. The Jacob Trouba helmet throw helped, and they got a little bit better going forward after that. But they need something to pull them together right now. And I think that needs to be Jacob Trouba and his leadership. So I'm not saying that he necessarily has to put on a show and make a big scene on the ice and throw something again. But I am saying I think that he needs to be called upon by the Rangers teammates that he has. Jacob Trouba has to do something to rally these troops. And I don't know if that's going to be once we get to the All-Star break, whether he just brings them in and has a players only meeting. I don't know. I know that we discussed recently, or at least you wrote about it in an article, the Rangers need a players only meeting. I think it's necessary. And I'm in agreement with that. So, Eric, I guess I just want to ask you, what do you think Trouba's role is in all of this inconsistency, and how can he hopefully be the catalyst to pull this team out of it?
See, now this is where it gets interesting, because like we said, Adam Fox and Ryan Lindgren, they get the 2 thumbs up. Jacob Trouba, he's only going to get the 1 thumbs up, because he started the season off amazing. He had a pretty bad season in his first year as captain last year, and me and you very much made it known how we felt about him and how he was playing. But then he changed our minds. He started off the season this year very solid, but now, I think of players that are hurting the Rangers defense. Jacob Trouba is certainly one of those names. And yeah, it's time for another Jacob Trouba helmet throw. It was time for a helmet throw about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and it hasn't happened yet. And the reason why I think it hasn't happened yet is because, unlike last season, Jacob Trouba is now a part of the problem, like one of the main pieces of the problem. Last year, it was easy for him to just show his dedication and leadership by making that big scene on the ice and rally his team together. But right now, I don't think Jacob Trouba is the kind of player that the other players want to rally around. I don't think the Rangers would ever trade him away or anything, nor could they. He's making like $8 million a year or something crazy like that. And he's the captain. The C that he wears on his jersey automatically kind of protects him in his second year of captaincy. But I look at Jacob Trouba. I don't really see a leader over the last few weeks. Yeah, he's always going to have his big hits, but that's about it at this point. We're not in the locker room, but if he was being vocal and trying to make a change, we would have, at least seen some results by now. I think he defensively has not played that well. He gets skated around. He's making stupid passes, stupid plays. And, it could be because he's playing with KeAndre Miller, who I think has been the worst defenseman, which we'll get into in a minute. But it's really frustrating when you have all these problems in the defense and your captain can't really do anything to drag you out of it, because he too is a part of the problem. And, I don't hate Jacob Trouba. I think he is still playing all right. I'm not going to dog on him too hard, but I'm not going to sit here and defend him. But if there's any change that is going to be made, it's going to start with him. So I think step one is getting Jacob Trouba out of his own personal slump, getting him back on the right side of things. I know things in his personal life are a little crazy. Him and his wife were expecting a baby. I think they had the baby. I think they did. I'm not sure though. If they did, congrats. If not, I'll say it again in a few weeks. But so he's got a lot of personal things going on. It's just one of those really unfortunate situations where, not unfortunate that he's having a kid, but just the fact that he can't focus all of his time and energy into fixing his team that he is as captain. But as soon as he's able to get things back on track for himself and his own personal game, I'm sure results will start to follow when he becomes a role model again, and the other defensemen can look to their captain for leadership and guidance. And then hopefully we'll see some results there.
I think there is a conversation to be had about this whole captaincy for Jacob Trouba, about whether or not they should go back to having the alternate captains, or you know what I'm saying? So rather than just the one lone captain. That was a big change for the Rangers, bringing in Jacob Trouba, making him the one lone captain. I think there is a conversation to be had about going back to the old system, maybe one day. I'm not so sure, because over the past 2 seasons, we've seen that it seems pretty difficult for them to put all of that responsibility on one player. And it seems also like a lot of media narratives can get struck at Jacob Trouba. He can become quite a big target because of this. And I wonder if that has anything to do with the pressure that he feels on his shoulders as well. I'm sure the reporters ask him extra questions, say, as the captain, what do you think of this? Hey, captain, how are you going to do this? I think that there's something to be said about maybe not stripping him of his captaincy, but not going with the one lone captain again next season. That's probably a next season conversation, but I think it's worth having a discussion in the offseason about whether or not they should stick with this one captain system that they implemented last year. But moving over to your favorite player, KeAndre Miller, let's go ahead and have the conversation about him, because I know from texting you, from texting Colin, from texting Will, all of us are just in agreement. KeAndre Miller has been really poor this season and needs to be better. But I'm going to let you break it down. I know that you have some pretty strong thoughts about KeAndre Miller, so why don't you tell me how you're feeling about the way that he's performed in recent weeks?
Before I get into KeAndre Miller, I looked it up. On January 15th, Molly Walker said that Jacob Trouba announced the birth of his baby boy. It's not going to show, but there it is. Congratulations to the Troubas. KeAndre Miller, though. All right. KeAndre Miller started off the season as one of the most inconsistent players on the Rangers. Some games, he was really good. He looked really good. He played really good. Other games, he looked really terrible. All of a sudden, we would always say, like, KeAndre Miller, you got to figure it out. You need to just stop flipping back and forth and just stick to one. Well, he did stick to one, but it wasn't being good. He stuck to being bad. It's just like every single game, he looks like he has no idea how to play hockey. And I don't know what changed. He's making, like we said about Jacob Trouba, where he's making dumb plays, making dumb passes, just gets skated around. KeAndre Miller is the same exact thing, but it's like 10 times worse. You just look back that last game against San Jose, go back and look at all 3 goals that San Jose Sharks scored. I don't remember how many of them KeAndre Miller was on the ice for, but I guarantee it was at least one of them, and I guarantee it was his fault. It's just, I don't know what happened. And it's so frustrating to say, because in past seasons, like, I loved KeAndre Miller. He was a young, exciting, offensive defenseman who could score points, play great defense too. He's really big, tall. He's got a giant stick that he can just like sweep the puck away off opposing players' sticks. And it was just so promising. And then all of a sudden this season is just terrible. Like, he's hurting my mom's feelings. He's my mom's favorite player, and she's concerned. KeAndre Miller, how dare you hurt my mom's feelings? I don't know. It's like, he's just so bad. He's like, I can't even break it down statistically. Just if you look up any KeAndre Miller stat, I guarantee it's one of the worst on the Rangers of the defenders. It's just, it's blown my mind. And I think in the conversation of who should stay and who should go, yeah, KeAndre Miller, he's got a few years left on his contract. But if there's like a top 4 defenseman on the trade block when this trade deadline rolls around, Chris Drury, you need to ship KeAndre Miller and a 2nd-round pick to get Jacob Trouba a new defensive partner. I hate to say it, but the Rangers are not a Stanley Cup contender when they have defensemen like KeAndre Miller hurting the team like this. And fingers crossed, I hope and I pray that he can turn his season around and get back on track, because we did see flashes of that elite potential early on this year, but it's been a while since I've seen any of that. And, hopefully he can bring it back. But honestly, I'm not too hopeful.
All right, in defense of KeAndre Miller, I will say he does have more points in his last 10 games than Jacob Trouba and Ryan Lindgren. So
yeah,
there is
but
something
at the
to be said
same
about
time,
that.
Jacob Trouba and Ryan Lindgren are not offensive defensemen. Ryan Lindgren
True.
scoring a point is like once in a blue moon. I bet, how many points does he have this season? Like 2?
I'm just looking at the last 10 game stats. He doesn't have any in the last 10. So
Yeah, Ryan Lindgren probably has like 2 points this season, but it doesn't matter because he plays with Adam Fox, who does all the point scoring for that defensive unit, and he has lockdown defensive skills. So you don't really want him to score it. Jacob Trouba, it's kind of the same thing where he's more of a lockdown defenseman. He probably has like 8 points this season, if I had to guess, somewhere in that range. But he doesn't score that often. But Jacob Trouba, when he's playing well, he's like more of the Ryan Lindgren-esque defensive defenseman, whereas KeAndre Miller is supposed to be the offensive defenseman who produces the points for that unit, but also is still defensively sound when he needs to play defense. He has done neither.
yeah.
And
So
Jacob is
let me correct. I actually had it wrong. I was looking at the last 5 game stats for the last 10 games. KeAndre Miller has 2 points. Jacob Trouba also has 2 points. And Ryan Lindgren has 1 point in the last 10 games. So I think that furthers your argument, puts it into perspective. Comparatively speaking, you have 11 points out of Adam Fox. So if you're wanting KeAndre Miller to be more like Adam Fox in this regard, the same amount of points as Jacob Trouba would obviously not indicate that he's doing his job well in the last 10
And
games.
it's not a perfect comparison. Like obviously the
Of
Fox
course.
and Lindgren duo they're on their own level, but you like they're structured the same way. Laviolette, and I guess that's been the two top defensive lines for like the last three head coaches. They all seem to have the same idea in mind, where you pair a defensive defenseman and an offensive defenseman, and it's worked in the past. Sure, Trouba and Miller will never be as good as Lindgren and Fox, even when they're playing at their best, but they are playing far worse. And I don't know. I just think in regards of both offense and defense, KeAndre Miller is seriously lacking recently, at least.
Yeah, I mean, you're right about that. He has almost the same amount of time on ice as Jacob Trouba in the last 10 games. He has less blocks. He's taken way less shots. And he has the same amount of assists, which is 2 points. So even statistically speaking, if the eye test isn't enough for you guys, Eric's analysis on the eye test, you can just look at the stats and it'll tell you over the last 10 games, KeAndre Miller is underperforming by a pretty wide margin compared to just about everybody else in that top 4 for the defensive pairings. But let's go ahead and talk about the final defensive pairing, Eric. We kind of grouped them together, Braden Schneider, Erik Gustafsson. What I will say is I thought that Erik Gustafsson at the beginning of the season looked like he was low-key a steal, like a sick free agent signing. We didn't have super high expectations for him, but he started off the season really hot. Since then has really cooled off and has not looked like the player that he did at the beginning of the year, and has been rather underwhelming and has kind of just become exactly what we expected him to be when they signed him, which was not a whole lot. So Erik Gustafsson, not crazy about the way he's played. Braden Schneider, meh. Those two, I think, need to perform better. Granted, they are playing like 8 minutes less than everybody else in front of them defensively, but even still, I'm not thrilled with the way that they've played, and I'm sure that you have probably better analysis on it.
Yeah, this is one of those occurrences where Colin was able to tell the future. Like right when we signed Erik Gustafsson, he said straight up, Erik Gustafsson is not good. He's just like a glorified forward who plays defense. And he kind of ended up being right at the start of the season. Gustafsson was amazing. When Adam Fox got injured, he was able to step up into that role and he filled it perfectly. He was playing really, really well. We had nothing bad to say. It looked like a masterclass signing by Chris Drury that we were getting all that out of him for less than $1 million. But now at this point, I'm like, he's really come down to earth. He was going from having highlight reel assists and goals to I can't remember the last time I even heard Sam Rosen say his name on the broadcast. It's like he's just there. Half the time I don't even know if he's playing or if Zach Jones is playing, because both of them are kind of like irrelevant at this point. And he's only signed to 1 year. I don't think he's going to be traded away or anything at the deadline this year, unless it's just a part of as a depth piece to add on to a package deal. But I wouldn't be shocked if after this season, Drury is just like, all right, we had a good season, bye. And he just doesn't get re-signed. And then Braden Schneider, I've come to this conclusion where over the last 2 or 3 years, we keep seeing Braden Schneider be paired up with other defensemen. There was Zach Jones, Erik Gustafsson, Nico Mikkola, Ben Harper, I think was another one. This is they just keep coming and we just keep failing to realize something. And it's that we just keep saying, oh, we haven't found the right defenseman to pair up with Braden Schneider. And we just keep going through this revolving door of defensemen and none of them keep working out with Schneider. Well, here's a thought. What if Braden Schneider is the problem? It's it's mind-blowing that no one has ever come to this conclusion.
He's the common denominator in this problem every year.
And I feel like it's really been shown this season where Braden Schneider, he's always been average. There's a reason he's on the third defensive pairing. And I think if we had a better prospect, he would just slide right in. But Schneider's one of those young, promising guys who it's maybe one of these years he'll explode and have an insane breakout season, but it just hasn't happened yet. And I'm like, what would have happened if like we put Nico Mikola and Ben Harper together, you know? It's like, what would have happened then? Instead of just keeping our faith in Braden Schneider and just being like, one of these days we'll find the right guy for him. Maybe he is the wrong guy. I don't know. And again, it's kind of, I feel like Braden Schneider has similar issues to KeAndre Miller. It's just that he's a lot younger and he doesn't get a lot of ice time as KeAndre Miller. So these problems aren't as like prominent, and no one's gonna like blame him as much because, you know, he is only like 22 years old or something like that. You know, he's not supposed to be an insane elite defenseman just yet. But, you know, I haven't seen any progress in like the last 2 years. He's kind of just like been static, you know, just like the mediocre line, hasn't really regressed, hasn't really improved. He's just kind of there. And I don't know. I think if we're talking about this season at the trade deadline, he is a restricted free agent after this season. So if the Rangers want to go out and trade for another depth defensive piece to really just improve this defensive cores, by all means, ship off Braden Schneider to another team and then maybe re-sign him after this season. Who knows? Like, I don't know. But he could be like we've seen in the past, the Rangers always go out and trade for a rental. Braden Schneider could very well be a rental for any other team in the league looking to take a chance on him and seeing if he'll work out a little bit better in their system.
Yeah, it's possible. And like I said, I think the Rangers should explore making changes to their defensive core at the trade deadline, whether that means shipping someone off, bringing someone in. But I kind of want to wrap this up now, Eric, and just ask, like, finally, the answer to the question, like, what is the key here? How do the Rangers fix their defense? Is it through making a trade? Is it through getting rid of one of their current players? Is it through, like, what is it? Is it Trouba throwing his helmet? How do the Rangers finally fix this, get their defense back on track, and get back to winning hockey games?
I think there's two alternate routes we can go here. There's the easy way and there's the hard way. The hard way is that Jacob Trouba snaps out of it, wakes up and is like, "Oh my God, we've been playing bad hockey," which he's already done that because after every single loss, he or some defender says something along the lines of like, "Yeah, we played really bad. We know we're playing really bad." Unless you're Braden Schneider, you'll say we made a bunch of ouchies, which let's just move past that line that he had. But then really the way to do it is Jacob Trouba recognizes that something has gone wrong and he accepts responsibility for it. He starts to make changes in his own game to improve, and he's able to rally the rest of his defensive core behind him and work towards the common goal of playing good defense. That's the hard way. That's going to take a little bit of time. The easy way is that Chris Drury just sends KeAndre Miller off to any team that is willing to take him. He sends Braden Schneider away. He sends Erik Gustafsson away, and he just keeps Trouba, Fox, and Lindgren. And then we just have a new defensive core. Chris Drury just blows it all up, starts again with about a month and a half left until the deadline. No, I don't want it. I don't want that way. That's the easy way, but I don't want it. I would rather see my captain, Jacob Trouba, step up, be a man, and just rally this team back into shape. Peter Laviolette works them, and they just become the defensive team that we saw at the beginning of the season. Because, you know, we talk about sending people away, who should stay, who should go. Don't forget, at the beginning of this season, the Rangers were the number one team in the NHL in goals against. They have the ability and the skills and the potential to be the number one defensive team in the NHL. So there's no denying the fact that they're able to reach that certain point again, as long as they're able to just work out these kinks. And I know the fan base is very divided right now. Half of the fans are panicking, being like, blow it all up, let's start again, rebuild. The other half is saying like, I'm not worried at all. It's only late January. We still have like 4 months until playoffs start. They'll figure it out. And I think I'm kind of on that side where I'm not really panicking. We definitely have some problems. If the playoffs started right now, the Rangers would get swept in the first round by whoever they're playing. But we Laviolette and Trouba together, they'll work it out. And I don't, you know, I said a lot of bad things about KeAndre Miller, but I also did acknowledge the fact that earlier this season he showed flashes of elite potential, and I'm gonna firmly believe that he's gonna reach that potential. Hopefully this season, if not one day, because my mom is hoping for it.
Yeah, I'll just say closing thought on this. I'm apprehensive to the idea of blowing up the defensive core. I think that the defensive core should stay intact. I just think that they need to make some sort of strategic changes to how they play. And they need to have a players only meeting. I think it's very necessary. I don't know if they've had one. Obviously, we don't get all the info from the locker room, but I think that it's necessary that Trouba calls them all in and figures this out, and helps lead them and guide them forward. But really, just overall, I still think that the talent is there. I'm going to keep saying this. I've been saying it all season long. Every time I'm on one of these episodes, the problem to me is not the talent on this team. It's the injuries on this team. It's plagued everybody. I think another part of this conversation that we didn't even really dive into, Eric, the defense is probably being hindered by a lack of consistency from the offense. You've got some of these forwards who are not contributing defensively, or maybe not as much as they should, and also not contributing enough offensively to keep the games out of reach of opposing teams. So obviously they collapsed the other night against the Sharks, and that's been kind of a consistent theme lately for the Rangers, is collapsing in games that they should win. But overall, I do think that the talent is there. As you said, I'm going to keep harkening back to the beginning of the year where this team looked like it was unstoppable. They've got the ability, they've got the talent. They just have to put it together, stay healthy, and fix it. And I for what it's worth, I do think that the All-Star game break, having a nice little break, can really help a team. Just hit the reset button, reboot, take some time off, get back stronger than ever. I think that's what I'm holding my breath for now for the Rangers. Get over to that break, come out of the break strong, and finish the second half of the year. We're already past the halfway point, but you get what I'm saying. Finish the rest of the season strong and make a good run into the playoffs.
That was the last thing I was going to say. Is right now the Rangers, the defense in particular, they're like crawling their way to that All-Star break, which is just right around the corner. I don't remember exactly what day it is, but it's probably only like a week away. Which the Rangers probably have like 2 or 3 games before then. Just do what you can, get as many points out of these next few games, and go into the All-Star break, sit down, relax, take a breath, be like, all right, like clear my mind. We're going to go back in. We're going to figure this out, and we're going to finish the season strong. Because after the All-Star break, there's not that much time left. Like the regular season is going to end early April, and we're almost at February. So like the clock is ticking. We're not in like urgent, like panic mode yet where we're like, oh no, like we have all these problems and the playoffs are about to start. The Rangers have time, but they don't have all the time in the world. So, don't rush the fixing of the team, but also don't like hold it off, but I don't know. I'm faithful. KeAndre Miller, I'm sorry. I love you. And I know you're going to prove me wrong one of these days.
I hope so. I hope he does prove you wrong. I still like KeAndre Miller. I'm just frustrated with the way that he's played, but I know that the potential is there. He'll turn it around. He'll get better. I think Trouba will as well. Overall, like I said, the talent's there. They just got to become more consistent, put it all together. Once they do, I think this Rangers team will get back to peak form like they were at the beginning of the season. I just hope that it comes sooner rather than later, and it's not too late. They're still sitting near the top of the Metro, or I think still at the top of the Metro. I don't want to see them. I don't want to see them tumble down. And they're only at the top of the Metro right now because of the strong start to their season. They have not played like a top of the Metro team recently. So
I said this in yesterday's episode. Like I got to say it again just to double down on it. It annoys me so much when people are like, we don't have any problems. We're still first in the Metropolitan Division. I'm like, yeah, because we started off the season so good that having a losing record in your last like 20 games since Christmas is still good enough to keep us afloat. And this season, the Metropolitan Division sucks. There's like flat out, the Philadelphia Flyers are number 2 in the division. Like this is not a good division this year. Any other division, Rangers would have sunk far down. But sorry, you can continue.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much more to say. Last thing that I'll say before I close it is, I think that oftentimes in sports, you see a regression to the mean. A team can get off to a really hot start and outperform their potential, and then they can get really way far below their potential, playing really poorly. The mean is somewhere in the middle, right? So it's how far towards the bottom is that mean, or how far towards the top? Like, what is the actual average middle ground outcome for this Rangers team? Is it smack dab in the middle of greatness and putrid play, which makes them probably a top 3 seed, but not the number 1 seed? Or is it closer to the top end? I'm not sure. Whatever your expectations are for this team, they're going to regress to those expectations. I personally am not sure that we're going to see them get back to that peak form that we saw at the beginning of the year. I think that was like a little bit of a mirage, but I do think that their average is closer to that than it is to what we're seeing right now. So I do expect when they return to form to be a really good team, but I don't expect them to be a record-breaking earth-scorching hot team that they were at the beginning of the year. So before I close, I saw you got one last thought.
Breaking news at the time of this recording. Filipino is back on the ice for practice in a red no contact jersey.
Let's go. That's huge.
Talk about returning to form. He's here. He is him. He's back. Filipino.
We're so back. We're so back. Well, now we got a good topic for tomorrow's episode for sure.
Oh, yeah, we'll be back tomorrow.
Filipino. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about Filipino and everything else surrounding the New York Rangers right here on Fireside Rangers. So make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts on the topics down below in the comment section. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review and go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Rangers. Without further ado, we'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Rangers.
Rangers.